What's going on, everybody? And I hope you've had a fantastic Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, and Christmas overall with your friends, family, and loved ones. This is MYG Jeffy T85 here, and I'm just going to talk about the Carlos Correa situation with the New York Mets. Now, obviously, we got the news yesterday. The New York Mets originally agreed to a 12-year, $350 million deal after the deal broke down because of a medical that happened before with the San Francisco Giants when their deal was originally agreed upon. Well, 13-year, $350 million deal. The Giants actually postponed the press conference, and the Mets actually swooped in, and they were able to sign a deal with Carlos Correa, or at least agree upon the deal. Now, obviously we heard the news yesterday. Now the Mets have expressed concerns about Carlos Correa and that knee injury that he had surgery on and have a steel plate put into his knee all the way back in his rookie year in 2014. So that's two teams that have now expressed concern with the medical and the physical that Carlos Correa took. The difference is, though, the Mets right now and Carlos Correa, both teams, and here's the updated right now, both teams are both trying to work on some type of rework deal to try to keep Carlos Correa here in Queens and let him be the starting third baseman for the New York Mets heading into the 2023 season. So now you're going to be asking, well, what kind of deal are they going to be able to put together to keep Carlos Correa here with the Mets? What are they going to be able to agree on? How's the rework deal going to be put together? What's the language in the deal? Is there going to be some type of opt-out clause that's going to be put in a little bit earlier just so the Mets can protect themselves just in case that knee injury becomes some type of issue later on in the season? Well, that's the type of language right now that both Scott Boras and the New York Mets representatives right now are talking together along with Carlos Correa, because it seems that both sides are determined to try to work out some type of rework deal, but the question is, what kind of deal will that be? Now, obviously, there is a comparison to this that was broken down by MLB.com's John Heyman with the fact that JD Martinez few years ago signed a 5-year, $112 million deal with the Boston Red Sox, but they were able to discover some type of injury that JD Martinez had in the past, and they had to try to rework that deal to try to make sure they could put it together without allowing him to just go back into free agency. But here's the thing. Would Carlos Correa be willing to take less years from the New York Mets? Would he say take a 5, 6, 7-year deal? Maybe around 200-something million, 220, 230, maybe even close to 250. I don't think he's going to get the original 12-year, $315 million deal. That's just not going to happen now because the Mets have to protect themselves just in case when we get to the later part of those years that Carlos Correa's knee doesn't become some type of issue going forward. So the New York Mets have got to protect themselves. So if they can work out maybe like a 7-year deal, if you want to even decrease it even more, maybe like a 6-year deal, maybe around 225, 230 million, maybe Carlos Correa might end up accepting that. He might still be steadfast. And if Carlos Correa is steadfast about keeping that 12-year, $350 million deal, or even if he wants to keep it above 10 years, I don't know if the New York Mets are going to want to play ball, and they might just decide to cut loose the deal, retract their deal on the table, and might just let Correa go back into free agency because it's a risk that they might not be willing to take, and it'll also open up opportunities for some of these young kids. But either way, there's obviously a lot of concern with that surgically repaired right knee of Carlos Correa that he suffered back in 2014 during his rookie year. And even though he's missed only 14 games in his past few seasons overall due to injury, there's still obvious concern. I mean, he is 28 years old. He's still in the prime of his baseball career, but you never know with players. They could end up start breaking down at any age, so you have to make sure if you're going to sign him to such an extraordinary deal like a 12-year, $315 million deal, or in the Giants' case, a 13-year, $350 million deal, you have to be able to protect yourself just in case that said player ends up breaking down during the season or in the latter years of that deal, so you're not stuck with a bad albatross contract with a player that's truly just not the same player he was in the past. And then what are you going to have to do? You're stuck with that contract, and there's nothing you could do about it, even if you try to work out some type of injury settlement. And I really believe the New York Mets might try to put some type of opt-out clause in that deal with Carlos Correa. If you want to try to keep it a longer deal, maybe you put in an opt-out clause after like the fourth or fifth year. So say like Carlos Correa signs, I'll give or take an 8-year, $270 million deal. Just throwing it out there. Maybe you could put an opt-out clause after the fourth or fifth year of that deal. So just in case, what you can do is you can allow Carlos Correa around age 30, 33, 34 to be able to test the market again if you want to try to get out of that deal if he starts breaking down a little bit. So I think that's what the New York Mets and Carlos Correa's representatives are right now discussing, and it seems like both sides do want to get this deal done, and there have been other teams that have been checking in on Carlos Correa after the New York Mets have expressed concerns, and now they're just trying to work out the rework deal. But it sounds like that both the New York Mets and Carlos Correa's representatives want to try to work out some type of revised deal. It's just a question of, are they going to be able to do this? Or is Carlos Correa's representatives going to be too steadfast and are the New York Mets a little bit too lenient to want to try to keep the deal at the length that it is right now? That's the type of stuff that the New York Mets and Carlos Correa are discussing at the moment. Obviously, the holiday weekend, it's taken a little bit of a pause. But I believe that these two sides will be able to work out some type of rework deal because I think Correa wants to be a New York Met. I think the Mets want Correa here. So I think ultimately they're going to have to sacrifice some of the years in the contract. They're going to have to sacrifice some of the dollars in the contract if they want to try to put this together, because Carlos Correa right now would be a major boost to that New York Mets infield and to the lineup overall. And at the same time, if God forbid he wants to test the market in the future, and if he starts having issues with that surgically repaired knee, then the Mets can find a way to get out of that deal, and it's going to be good for both parties moving forward. So that's what I'm waiting to see with the New York Mets and Carlos Correa, how they're going to discuss this rework deal. What's the language in the deal going to be? Is there going to be an opt-out after 3, 4, 5 years? Are the Mets going to shorten that deal overall, give him less money? What is Carlos Correa willing to accept in terms of less years and less money? And that's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking forward to going forward. But I believe, if I had to put a percentage on this, I do believe that Carlos Correa will still be a New York Met. I just think that the deal might be around the, probably the 6 to 8 year range instead of the 12-year range, just so the Mets can protect themselves. And if it does somehow stay in the double-digit range and double-digit range in terms of years, I do believe that the New York Mets are going to protect themselves and put some type of opt-out clause or some type of clauses in the contract just to protect themselves going forward. But I just wanted to talk about this in my video. So if you guys like this video, hit the like button below. Sub up if you haven't already to NYGJeffyT85 for more breaking news, updates, and chatter surrounding the New York Mets. Turn on the bell for notifications on the next video or short dropping on the channel surrounding the New York Mets. And let me know in the comment section what you think the New York Mets and Carlos Correa are going to do in terms of trying to rework this massive deal after concerns came up during his physical and his medical while the Mets were giving it to him yesterday. So now we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen. So I want to know your percentage chance and if you think the Mets should still go forward with this deal and sign Carlos Correa as their future third baseman of this team. So I thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your Christmas night. I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah. Take it easy, and as always, let's go New York Mets. All you got to do is you got to believe in those boys from Queens.